Welcome, everyone, to this month's edition of our Unbridled Leadership Lab. And today we are going to be discussing the topic of mistrust and how to move our teams from mistrust to momentum. So super excited to be sharing this with you today because it's such an important topic. And judging by the amount of interest that there's been on this particular topic, it's obviously something that is front of mind for everyone right now. So I am just going to start sharing my screen and let's get into this. So hopefully you can all see that right now. So why is this such an important topic and what is the challenge for leaders right now? So I think we can probably all agree there are a lot of challenges happening in business right now, but some of the ones that I see are this outdated leadership structures where the old way of leading businesses based on this command and control rigid structure are failing. And to thrive, we've got to adapt and align and evolve and embrace a new leadership model that's much more sustainable, conscious, and regenerative, meaning everyone thrives. And for those of you that have been connected and been in my world for a while, you'll know that I'm a massive proponent of the fact that the current ways that we run and lead businesses are no longer fit for purpose for the 21st century. And we need a new model, one that is much more flexible and dynamic and responds to the environment that we're in today. I think the other thing we can probably all agree right now is there's an unprecedented complexity going on in the world. Leaders are striving to navigate change and uncertainty. They're struggling with burnout, both of themselves and their team members. We've got misaligned teams not really understanding the purpose of the business, and what that's leading to are low levels of engagement and a survival mentality rather than a collaborative mindset. And for you as a leader, if you're over here, maybe you're getting really frustrated. Maybe you are struggling with the dramas within your team. Your team are taking up so much of your time and energy that you're probably potentially even falling out of love with the business that you have been growing and scaling, that you set out with all your aims and objectives to achieve great things and the legacy you wanted to create. It just feels like it's being sabotaged by your team members. They're not on board. They're not pulling in the same direction as you. And you are super, super frustrated. But what could be the solution? Imagine instead the opportunity. You've got connected, collaborative teams that function like a herd. They're very intuitive. They're very responsive. They're united by trust, and everyone's got each other's backs. We don't have silos operating within the business, but rather everyone is collaborating together. Communication is effortless. And we're able to co-create solutions that no individual can achieve by themselves. And what does that result in? Importantly, it helps us get a rapid alignment of results. We've got to ensure that we've got our people and priorities and purpose all pulling in the same direction so that we can get these results without a delay. And that means we've got to create clarity and cohesion so that everyone pulls in the same direction, we unlock this momentum, and we make a measurable impact. And all the research shows that when we can get all of our team members pulling in the same direction and they're highly engaged and motivated, we can get up to 30% more productivity and profitability from our team members. And who wouldn't want that? So we've got where we are now and where we'd like to get to. So what I'd like to take you on this short masterclass is a journey of how you can get from here to here. And why is it really important that we focus on this topic right now? As I said, there's been a huge amount of interest in this topic from everyone signing up. But I think there's three main reasons why people are so interested in building rapid levels of trust within the business right now. And the first of that is the time freedom trap. There are more opportunities than ever before for our team members to go out and set up their own business. and create the freedom and prosperity they want. And we know from a lot of the younger generation, that's what they're really craving, this opportunity to have freedom and do what they want when they want. So as an employer, we're not just struggling with attracting team members into our business and ensuring we're the best place that people want to come and work. We're also struggling with the fact that these people might not want to work in a business anymore, but they want to create their own business. One of the other reasons I think this is really important right now is that we live in a multi-generational workforce. There have never been more generations working in the workplace at the same time. And as a leader, this provides us with a real challenge because each generation have got their own drivers, the things that motivate them to want to be working for us. So as a leader, we need to be able to navigate what each of these different segments of our workforce need because they are very different. And finally, we've got the advent of AI. And I actually think this is a massive opportunity for us right now because the way I see AI running is AI is going to take away a lot of the mundane tasks that a number of our team members have had to do. Actually, I think will make the work a lot more exciting. We're going to need people, though, that have got human capital. We're going to need to have our team members highly engaged and thinking and motivating. That's how they're going to add real value to the business. But what does that mean? It means that people right now are craving human connection. In a technological driven world, the need for human connection is more than ever before. And I certainly find that with my clients and everyone I'm talking to, this need and this feeling that we want to belong to something and get connected with other people and build relationship has just become more and more prevalent. And that's why I feel very privileged to be able to offer some of my clients on my Unbridled Leadership retreats, where they actually come out. We spend a day or 2 days out in nature, often with my horses, and the team get to reconnect with each other and build those relationships that everyone is craving. So we're going to cover 3 main areas today that are going to move us from mistrust to having some momentum in the business. And the first is we're going to talk about is how do we build game-changing trust? So how do we cultivate trust that fuels collaboration, performance, and loyalty? Secondly, we're going to look at impactful contribution, which is how do we empower our team members to step up, take ownership, and drive real results? And thirdly, we're going to look at the whole topic of unbridled adaptability, which is how to navigate change with confidence, agility, and resilience. So these are 3 pillars. And these are the 3 pillars that we are absolutely passionate about at Business Horsepower. And there are 3 outcomes that we believe that every unbridled team deserves. So I've created something called the Unbridled Teamship Roadmap, and game-changing trust, impactful contribution, and unbridled adaptability are the 3 main outcomes of this roadmap. And we believe that when you get all of these 3 areas aligned, what that enables you to do as a leader is create a lasting leadership legacy. And why is that important? Because I think that every leader wants to make a difference in the world. And I want to provide you with the tools and strategies in order to do that. And I think we leave a leadership legacy when we can create teams that are highly engaged, highly adaptive, they enjoy being at work, and we become the workplace where people want to come and work. And what a great legacy for us to leave as a leader when we leave behind us a workplace that is voted one of the best places to work, and everyone loves coming to work there and everyone thrives. Many of you will have heard me talk previously about the ripple impact, and I believe that as leaders, we have a responsibility to create a positive impact in the world and create a positive ripple effect. And when our team members go home from work and they've had a great time, they're highly motivated, highly engaged, they go home, they are more loving and caring and kind to their spouse, their partner, their children, and we create this really positive ripple effect out in the world. And I think there's nothing more profound that we can do as a leader than help create this positivity out in the world. So, why should you listen to me today? For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Julia Felton. I'm the Chief Energy Officer at Business Horsepower. And I'm actually a former corporate executive. I was an entrepreneur within the corporate world where I created my own business unit and took that from an idea on a piece of paper to the global market leader. And through that journey, I built my team from nothing, just me, to having a team of 35 people across the world. And what I've come to appreciate is that the rigid corporate world structure didn't always serve me to the best of my ability. And after I left the corporate world, I really discovered the power of nature and the power of horses. And in fact, my best leadership and teamwork lessons have come from my horses. Because what they have shown me that a true leadership isn't about control, but it's about connection. So I've spent years helping fast-growing businesses build aligned high-performance teams that create sustainable success by leveraging proven frameworks inspired by nature. And that's what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you a proven framework that is going to help you move your teams from mistrust to momentum. So let's just have a look at what these paradigm shifts are, because we've got the game-changing trust shift. And this is a shift from control to connection. So trust is the foundation of every successful business and team. And without trust, there's resistance and disengagement, slow decision-making, high turnover and burnout, and a toxic culture of blame and micromanagement. And for those of you that have read my book, Unbridled Business, you'll know trust is a mixture of glue, really. It's a glue that kind of keeps the organization together, but it's also an oil that makes everything move. So without trust, I don't believe you can have a high performance team. And in fact, we only have to look at the work of Patrick Lencioni, where we see that trust is the foundation of absolutely everything. So no business can exist without trust. But what are the behaviors that leaders display who build game-changing trust? When we can build game-changing trust, we unlock faster execution with less friction, deep loyalty and a commitment from our team members, and a culture where people feel safe to contribute and innovate. So if we think about the old paradigm, this control thinking, how does it show up in business right now? It shows up through micromanaging instead of empowering. Because in this paradigm, leaders think control equals success. And that leads to team members feeling disengaged. A natural human need is this need for autonomy. And if we feel we are always being controlled by others, we can become quite resentful. And that's what leads to disengagement. When we've got this old paradigm of control thinking, often we see leaders withholding information. This lack of transparency breeds suspicion and frustration. What we also see is a blame culture emerging, because we blame people for the mistakes that are made instead of learning from them. And this fear of failure stifles any innovation and progress. Because I truly believe that the only way that we can learn is when we make a mistake. When we make a mistake, the gift for making a mistake is that we can learn and do something different. If we don't make any mistakes, we don't know how to do things differently. We assume that everything's going to be all right. And in fact, yesterday I was at an event and we were talking about the power of failing forward, doing something, experimenting, trying it out and getting a different result. Control thinking also causes inconsistent leadership, because what we see is leaders saying one thing and doing another thing. And that erodes the leader's credibility and, more importantly, their trust in the team members. And also, when we've got control of thinking, we find an over-reliance on authority. We see leaders who assume that trust should be automatic rather than earned. And the only way that I believe as a leader we can earn trust is by behaving into it. We need to do the things we say that we are going to do, and that is what builds trust. But we've got to remember that trust is slow to build and quick to lose. So as a leader, we really must think about, are our actions instilling trust with others or not? So if control thinking is the old paradigm, the new paradigm around game-changing trust is connection thinking. And how this shows up in business are leaders leading with vulnerability and authenticity. Admitting mistake makes us relatable and actually earns trust. I think about the work of Brené Brown around vulnerability. When we are vulnerable as leaders, we are seen as approachable, human. Leaders aren't expected to be infallible and have all of the answers and be perfect. Actually, there's something quite endearing about a leader who, on occasions, shows their vulnerability and shows their humanity. Actually, that makes us more connectable to our team members. In the new paradigm of connection thinking, we're able to create psychological safety, and that makes it easier for our team members to speak up and contribute ideas. And psychological safety is such a key factor in business right now. We need to have the diversity of opinion and thought from our team members, but they are only going to speak up and share that if they feel that it's safe to do so. So as a leader, in order to build this trust and connection with our team members, we have to be consistent and reliable. And our words and actions have to align in order to build our credibility. We also need to empower rather than micromanage. And this is about giving people that autonomy we just spoke about to take ownership. Actually, our team members want to have that control and to take ownership of things. But so often I see leaders just stifling their team members' ability to share ideas and solutions because they want to micromanage. The leader wants to keep control because they think that will be best and safer for them. But ironically, it causes this massive disengagement within the team. So I'm a massive proponent of how do we empower our team members to take ownership to move the business forward. And leaders with this connection thinking foster open communication and transparency, and it's open communication that strengthens the relationships and the trust. So if we're really to think about what game-changing trust is, we're really trying to answer this key question within business. How do we remove the barriers between our teams? And I'd love you to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is that your team are operating in a silo mentality, up to 10 where there's seamless unity and everyone is working together. So what your score is between 1 and 10. Are your team right now in that silo mentality where each team is just looking out for themselves? Or are all of your teams working together in seamless unity? Okay. So what are 5 key strategies for building game-changing trust? First of all, we need to build relational trust. So these are strong interpersonal relationships where we show care and fairness and respect for the team members. And I think one of the challenges I've seen in business right now is in the hybrid environment that we're working in, building relationship trust takes time, but also we need to really consciously commit time to building these relationships. When we were all together in the workplace, it was a lot easier to build relationship trust because we bumped into people. We were maybe going to make a coffee in the morning and we saw a team member and we had a quick chat with them on the fly. Nowadays, we're not having those ad hoc, sporadic conversations because we're not in the same physical location. So we really need to think when we get onto a Teams or a Zoom call, how do we spend some time actually building relationship trust so that relationships with team members aren't just purely transactional, they're actually adding value to the person because we're building relationships with them. The second of the key strategies for building game-changing trust is competence-based trust. So as leaders, we need to establish our credibility through our expertise and our transparency in our decision-making. Team members want to know that we know what we're doing. Now, let me put a caveat against that, because I think we can all agree that we live in a world where there is such a rapid rate of change and there is so much knowledge out there. We do appreciate that a leader can't know everything. And often what I really encourage you to do is think about shared leadership. But even within the whole concept of shared leadership, a leader can still be competent in terms of how they show up and the decisions that they make. The third strategy for building game-changing trust is structural trust. So this is all about implementing systems and processes to ensure fairness, which I think is really important. When we get into the whole area of DE&I, diversity, equality, and inclusivity, everything needs to be clear. Everyone wants to know what's going on. There's nothing that engenders office politics more, in my personal opinion, than when we see unfair processes going on. Joe Bloggs got promoted because he knows person X or person Y, rather than that being based on merit, for example. The fourth key strategy for building game-changing trust is consistency and follow-through. We need to align our words with our actions to build credibility over time. And finally, we have to be authentic and vulnerable. We need to be open about the challenges that we're facing as leaders and even admit our mistakes in order to foster connection. Earlier on, I said that the only way we learn is through making mistakes. So we need to be vulnerable, share when maybe we've made a decision that didn't work out, and encourage that open sharing and learning together. So, a couple of quick things for you to reflect on right now. The first is, where is team trust missing in your leadership or team? So think about, where is trust missing in your leadership or your team? And your action then is, what is one way you're going to build trust in your organization this week? So where's trust missing in your leadership or your team? And what is one way you're going to build trust in your organization this week? Because I absolutely love providing these webinars and masterclasses for you. But what's more important for me is that you actually take some action from the incredible information that I'm sharing with you. So your action around game-changing trust is to identify one way you're going to build trust in your organization this week. Okay, let's look at the second pillar, which is impactful contribution. And this is all about the shift from compliance to commitment. So the best teams aren't just doing their job, they're feeling really deeply connected to their work and its impact. And when we don't have this in the workplace, people feel undervalued or unseen. They don't understand how their work contributes to the bigger picture. And what we find are team members just waiting for direction instead of taking the initiative. And I'm sure as a leader, what you really want are your team members to step up and take the initiative and run with ideas. Because when leaders create impactful contribution, what we see are highly engaged team members who do take this level of ownership. They have a greater capacity and a ability to solve problems, and we see a much stronger alignment with the business goals. And who as a leader wouldn't want that? So if we look at the old paradigm around impactful contribution, it's compliance thinking. This is task-based leadership. where we're treating our team members as task doers rather than contributors. We tend to focus on process over purpose. So we lead with the rules rather than the meaning. And we often assume that people are motivated by a paycheck, and we neglect the emotional and psychological engagement that is so important in the workplace. There is so much research that team members would rather work for a boss that inspires and motivates them and maybe pays them slightly less than a boss that is going to pay them more but isn't inspiring and motivating. And I certainly know from my own experience that's the case. In fact, I had an opportunity at one point in my career where my boss had moved to a new firm and he wanted me to go with him and actually headhunted me into that firm to create that new business unit that I set up from an idea on a piece of paper and grew to be the global market leader. But he wasn't paying me as much as the firm that I was currently at who wanted me to stay. But the bosses at the firm I was at weren't inspiring. They weren't motivated. I didn't feel I was going to learn from them. I couldn't see what the opportunity was. So I jumped ship, and it wasn't about the salary check. It was about the opportunities that were there. And I think we need to always be cognizant of that with team. In the old paradigm of compliance thinking, we tend to overlook the strengths of individual team members. And therefore, we don't leverage their unique skills and genius. And this is a massive mistake. And again, I'll share with you when I was in the corporate world, I was very guilty of this, actually. I didn't really appreciate or understand the individual strengths of my team members. And there was one particular girl, her name's Jane. And what I now know to be true, she was amazing at galvanizing team members together. And she was like a bit of a mother hen. She really looked after everyone in the team and was great at what we call under the GC index, being a playmaker. She was orchestrating the team together. And on every single appraisal, I used to say to her, she needed to develop her Excel skills. So that wasn't her zone of genius. That wasn't how she added the most value to the team. So important that we understand each individual team member's contribution through the skills that they provide. And in this old paradigm of compliance thinking, it's all about dictating rather than co-creating. It's about leaders issuing directives rather than encouraging collaboration. And we've just talked about, we live in a society now where there is so much information coming to a leader each and every day. There's actually no way the leader can know everything. In fact, if you try and dictate, it's probably certainty that you won't actually have seen everything going on. You won't have the full picture and you'll be missing out on something. So this is the power of co-creating and collaborating with others, is that we get a bigger picture of what is happening and therefore can get to a better result. So this new paradigm of impactful contribution is about commitment thinking. And this is where we help our team members connect their work to a greater purpose. We make the why clear. Why are we doing this business? And what is that team member's contribution towards it? And it always reminds me of the story of when one of the US presidents went to NASA and he met a gentleman who was sweeping the floor. And he asked that gentleman, "What do you do?" And that gentleman said, "I help put people on the moon." That team member totally understood how his role as one of a janitor and a maintenance man at NASA was absolutely vital for everything else to run so that astronauts could land on the moon. So this is what I talk about, helping people connect their work to a greater purpose. In this commitment thinking, leaders recognize and amplify individual strengths and encourage people to play to their natural talents. And because of that, that encourages ownership, creativity, and initiative. So this is all about empowering team members rather than just micromanaging them. And then we're able to reward people's contribution and celebrate them for proactive problem solving, for example, rather than just their compliance of doing something. And that's going to make people a lot more engaged and motivated to be part of the team. And with this commitment thinking, we can therefore foster co-creation rather than this traditional top-down direction that we see in the hierarchical structure. We can have a much more fluid way of operating within the business where everyone co-creates and co-contributes to decisions. And that enables everyone to feel more engaged and motivated. So when we're thinking about impactful contribution, really the question that we're trying to answer within the business is how do we enable team members to realize what they are capable of? And again, if you'd like to score this on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is minimal effort and 10 is purposeful alignment. So what do we think our team members are capable of? Are they really putting in minimal effort? Or are they purposefully aligned with where the business is going? And then that would be a 10. So what are 5 key strategies for impactful contribution? The first is around the clarity and purpose alignment, is helping team members understand their role in the bigger vision. It's engaging in strengths-based leadership, so leveraging everyone's individual strengths to maximize impact. And when we do, this is when we are able to foster a sense of accountability and responsibility and create this culture of ownership. And actually, from all the clients that I've been talking to recently, this is one of the biggest things going on, is this lack of accountability within team members. And then that gets into the blame culture. It wasn't my department, it was somebody else's department. It's so important when people understand what the clarity and the purpose alignment is, where the business is going, they're leveraging their strength. They're going to start taking ownership for what is going on. They want to be proud to see and acknowledge what their contribution is to where the business is going. And when people are taking ownership, we've also got empowered decision-making going on because teams and individuals have the autonomy to make decisions that contribute to meaningful contribution. And then this is really important. It's about recognition and growth. Because one of my biggest frustrations actually in business right now is the lack of recognition and growth that I often see in organizations. And in fact, if you check out my podcast episode 52 of Impactful Teamwork, I have a whole podcast about the need for consistency and celebration and how that actually fuels productivity within the workplace. But so many leaders I speak to say, well, we don't have time to celebrate when we don't recognize our team members. But team members are craving recognition. And when team members get recognition, they feel like they're growing and moving forward. And recognition can happen in many different ways, from financial rewards to gifts to just a simple thank you note, or even just an acknowledgement, going up to somebody and saying, hey, great job, well done. We all want recognition. We all want to feel valued. We all want to be acknowledged. But really important when we think about recognition, that we actually do it in the way that the team member would like to be recognized. As a leader, really to spend time to find out, how do your team members want to be recognized? How do they want to be rewarded? And then you can do that in the most appropriate fashion. So a couple of questions for reflection right now. Where is your team operating on compliance instead of commitment? So where's your team operating on compliance instead of commitment? And for your action, I'd like you to identify one way you can empower individuals to contribute more meaningfully. So think about where the team's operating on compliance instead of commitment, and then identify one way you can empower your team members to contribute more meaningfully. Okay, and then the third pillar is unbridled adaptability. And this is about the shift from rigidity to resilience. And we've got to remember that change is the only constant in business right now. And yet, many leaders and teams resist change. And why do we resist change? There's a fear of uncertainty that leads to hesitation. Sometimes our rigid structures can prevent agility and innovation. But what we're also seeing is burnout is happening when people resist change. It actually takes a lot of energy to resist the change. Change is happening all around us at a rapid pace. And actually, if you're the person who digs your feet in, who doesn't want to change, that's hard work, because more often we're getting swept up in the tsunami that's moving forward with the change. But leaders who do cultivate unbridled adaptability within their businesses, they see change as an opportunity and not a threat. And it empowers the team members to navigate the uncertainty with confidence and develop resilience to thrive in an evolving market. And when we embrace this ability to change, then we're able to move to this whole concept of reinvention and really radically change our businesses in order to keep them current in the rapid pace of technology that we live in today. So in the old paradigm of rigidity thinking, what is going on? We're trying to control or predict everything. But as I've just said, change is inevitable. It's this kind of tsunami that's coming over us. And yet so many leaders try and resist it, as do team members. And why do they resist this change? Often it's due to fear. And, we feel comfortable, right, with what we're used to. And a lot of people just want to stay in their comfort zone. They don't want to expand. So the fear comes in: if we stay where we are going to be safe. Of course, the irony is when a tsunami's coming in, actually, you don't want to stay where you are. You actually need to move and get out the way. Sometimes this rigidity thinking comes from over-relying on past successes, failing to evolve and adapt to the new realities in the workplace. Sometimes we get rigid thinking about change because, as leaders, we haven't explained fully to our team members why the change is happening. We push new initiatives on them without involving people in the change. And therefore, people get very resistant because they don't understand why. So the most important thing we can do as leaders is really explain the context for any change, why it's happening, but importantly, what is in it for the team member. And finally, one of the reasons that we can have this rigidity thinking is that as leaders, we haven't built resilience within the teams and our team members and within the organization generally. We haven't equipped people with the skills to handle the uncertain situation we're in. And when people don't feel resilient, they feel like they're out of control. And again, they're going to dig in and not want to embrace change. So what can we do instead? What is the resilience thinking? We can reframe the uncertainty as an opportunity and shift from fear to curiosity. We can empower teams to innovate and allow this space for experimentation and new ideas. We can balance stability with flexibility and therefore create structures that allow for agility and change. We need to be really clear, as I said before, about communicating the why behind the change. What's the context of it, so that people can understand and embrace any transformation that's going on, because they understand why we're doing it and, importantly, what's in it for them. And then we can develop resilience as a leadership skill. We can teach our team members how to navigate uncertainty confidently. And I'd like to signpost you to, believe it was episode 40 on the Impactful Teamwork podcast, where my guest, Russell Harvey, actually delved into the whole concept of resilience. And there's loads of really useful information on that podcast about how you can help develop resilience within your teams. So the question we're really trying to answer when we're trying to get unbridled adaptability within our teams is, How can we adopt a mindset of continual experimentation? And again, if you'd like to score yourself between 1 and 10, at one end, we've got steadfast resistance, and that's when you'd be scoring yourself a 1. And at the other end, we've got radical reinvention, and that's when we're scoring ourselves at a 10. So how do you adopt a mindset of continual experimentation? 1, we've got steadfast resistance from the team, and 10, we've got radical reinvention. So what are 5 key strategies for creating unbridled adaptability? The first is reframing change. This is about shifting our perspective from fear to opportunity. The second strategy is around creating psychological safety, where we're creating an environment where experimentation is encouraged, is actively encouraged by leaders to try new things. The third of the 5 key strategies for creating unbridled adaptability is continual learning, creating a culture that supports skills development and retention. The fourth strategy is about agile decision-making, developing processes that allow for quick, informed pivots to happen in the business. And the fifth strategy is all around energy and well-being management. How do we prevent burnout by balancing intensity with recovery? And what I love in nature is that everything is cyclical. The sun comes up in the morning, goes down at night. The seasons run in different cycles. And when we think about an electricity wave, it runs up and down. It's got a flow to it. And yet in business, we have a habit of just putting our foot to the metal and keep going all the time. And it's no surprise to me that actually when humans eventually pass away, our heartbeat flatlines. We lose that undulation. And yet that's how we're living our lives, with our foot to the metal, trying to keep going and keep going. So it's really important that in order to have the time and space for us to think creatively and find unbridled adaptability, we need to balance this intensity with a period of recovery. So the reflection questions here are, where is rigidity holding you or your business back? And what is one way you can embrace adaptability this week? So what happens if you don't take action? If you stay in this place where there is high levels of mistrust within the business, the team members aren't engaged, aren't motivated, aren't taking responsibility and accountability for what's going on, and they're actually draining you of all of your energy. And what's going to happen is you're actually going to end up with more stress, more burnout, and even less fulfillment than you already have. And your team's performance will plateau or more likely decline. This is what I've seen over time. When we don't make any action and don't change, the organization gets into drift and we get further and further away from where we thought we were, and we actually see performance decline. In the worst case, you might end up in a toxic environment. So rather than your team being turbocharged, getting the highest level of performance that you can, you end up in a toxic environment. And opportunities will pass you by. And as a result, your business or even your career will stall. Imagine instead if you took action, what's possible for you. You feel in control and energized as a leader. Your team is engaged, aligned, and self-motivated. You create massive business momentum. Decisions become easier and faster. You start enjoying business a lot more. You love working with your team, collaborating with them. Everyone's on the same page. You're all pulling in the same direction. And therefore, your business results or even your career accelerates. Now, isn't that something you'd like to have? So the great news is that I've got a way to help you go from here to here. And what I'd like to offer you today is a turbocharge your team audit. Now, I only do a limited number of these turbocharge your team audits every single month. And because my time is very valuable, what I would like you to do so you too can get the most value out of this audit, because I know your time is valuable as well, is I'd love to invite you to go to businesshorsepower.com/quiz. So it's businesshorsepower.com/quiz. And there's a series of 9 questions I'd love you to answer that will help us identify which of these 3 areas you need to focus on first in your business. Is it building game-changing trust, creating impactful contribution, or unbridled adaptability? So then when we come to the audit, we'll know where to spend the focus of our audit together, so that I can help give you some really actionable strategies that you can put in place right now to turbocharge the performance of your business. As I said, you need to go to businesshorsepower.com/quiz. So it's businesshorsepower.com/quiz. Take the assessment there. Just answer the 9 questions. It'll take you like 2 minutes to do that. And then you'll be able to book in for a complimentary audit to help you apply the findings to your unique business situation. Because I feel this is the best way I can serve you to help you get to where you want to go into your business right now in the fastest way possible. So please do stay connected. Next month, we're going to be doing a different version of this masterclass and this webinar. We are actually going to be moving to a 20-minute teamship teach. And on this teach, I'm going to be sharing with you and unpacking over the course of the next year each of the accelerators from the model I showed you at the beginning that will help you drive your business forward. So we will be sending out a link so you can sign up for the teamship teaches, which I think will be really useful. I've decided to condense these down to just 20 minutes because I know your time is valuable. And I want to give you some stuff that's really fast and furious and action-packed so that you can get on and implement immediately. So please, if we're not connected, please do find me on LinkedIn at Julia Felton. Please feel free to check out our website at businesshorsepower.com or email me at julia@businesshorsepower.com. So I'd really like to thank you for your time and attention today. I really look forward to you taking the quiz. Remember, you take that at businesshorsepower.com/quiz, and then book in for your complimentary Turbocharge Your Team audit, where I will share with you some actionable steps you can take right now to accelerate the growth of your business and your team. Okay, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to seeing you in the future.